Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank everyone for being here. This is our Community and Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board meeting for December 6, 2021. How many people have got their Christmas shopping done? Good. I don't feel too much guilt then. That's a good thing. I'd like to call our meeting to order. First item of business is to approve our meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to read this. Thank you for joining us this morning for the City of Oklahoma City Community and Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board meeting. City Clerk, would you please verify a quorum? Yep. Good, thank you. We need to approve the meeting from our last meeting of October 4th, 2021. Very good, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, or just please cast your votes. Very good. Number 3, items for consideration, street resurfacing project.
Welcome to our last Community and Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board meeting of the calendar year. We have a full agenda today, so we will try to move expeditiously through as many of the project updates as possible. In addition to the normal category updates, we will have budget closeouts and resurfacing, bicycle facilities and trails. We will also ask you to consider a funding allocation in resurfacing and budget revisions in bicycle facilities. As always, please stop us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I'd like to introduce Brock Miner to present item 3A, street resurfacing projects.
Thank you. Good morning. Let's see. There we go. I got it. It popped up. We'll start with the category allocations. Just like in October, the resurfacing, the sidewalk, and the trails are virtually fully funded, and then street enhancement at 84% and bike infrastructure at 81%. Some of those may change throughout the project, throughout the board meeting today. And now I'll start with 3A1, our street resurfacing projects. And we always start with our, our status map. And as you can see, the majority of the projects are finished and complete. We just have a handful in construction, and those are finishing up pretty rapidly. If no questions there, then I'll move on to item 3A2 in our agenda. And this is going to be budget closeouts. Last October, we had a group of projects that had additional funds left in the projects, and so we closed those out. And today we have the same scenario where we have a group of projects that had additional funds left in the projects. We've closed those out, and so now we're asking that we can close these out and reallocate that money back into the street resurfacing category, and that is approximately $1.7 million.
Brock, I have a question real quick. The money that was left over was because...
Typically, we just we try to be conservative with the engineer's estimate so that we always kind of have enough money left over if anything comes up. But a lot of times we just, as we get into the project, you know, with some of the conservative estimates, it just falls a little bit under. And so, and it's happened the other way too. I think sometimes I come back and ask for more money to be reallocated, but we typically, you know, we try to overestimate those engineers' estimate by, you know, 5 to 10%. That way we make sure we have that money left over if there's any unforeseen items. And our project managers are really good at what they do, and a lot of times they get it right. And so that 5% will go back in. Will be left in the project, and so sometimes you'll have, you know, 100,000, 200,000 left in. And if you get quite a few of them, it adds up to $1.7 million.
Very good. Thank you, sir. It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. That passes.
Thank you all. This will bring us to item 3A3 in our agenda. Here we have a unique opportunity where $9 million have been identified in the general fund, and that's going to be allocated to street resurfacing. We kind of wanted to bring it to this board because, you know, routinely we pick those projects. We use additional funds or different sources of funds, you know, kind of like the corridor projects that we bring to y'all, where we have a bond project and we kind of go after some of our projects, some of our money, and then we use other sources of funds. And this $9 million is like that. It's another source of fund that we're used to seeing the street resurfacing, and so therefore we're going to come to this board. We've used the same methodology with the two options we have. We use the pavement condition index, the average daily traffic, and then the maintenance history cost, and we rank those as high as we, rank those projects. And so projects that don't have any funding source, we rank those projects, and so that's what we did here. I brought to you two different options. Option one is kind of the highest rank in different areas. We didn't go for corridor projects. We kind of separated the projects throughout the city. And so in those different areas, we tried to come up with the highest ranked. A lot of times the highest ranked project is more need, and so it typically is more expensive. It also usually is a 4-lane road instead of a 2-lane road. And so therefore it's a more expensive option. And so the projects we picked, they total to $13.6 million. So that would leave this board allocating $4.6 million with our funds, with October given about $3.25 million, and then this meeting we gave about 1.7. We actually have about 4.9, reallocated into street resurfacing, and so this option would be, an option that we could do because we could contribute the 4.6 since we have 4.9. I also brought another option too. I tried to kind of stay closer to the $9 million on this option, and so they're not as highly ranked projects. And I also tried to go through and try to find costs that were fairly comparable, and that kind of kept me around the $9 million. And so this is another option we have. It totaled up to be $9.4 million, and so this would only ask this board to put $400,000 in our own funds. And so I brought to you two options, and looking at the two different options, I guess I'll open it up if y'all have any questions so we can move forward and make a decision.
So what we need to do is select either option 1 or option 2.
Correct.
And include that as far as in our motion
Yes,
goes.
please. Yep.
So what you're saying basically is the first option is a higher, or resurfacing of arterial streets that is a higher priority.
Correct. Using our methodology that we've seen before, they rank a little higher on the next option too. It's a little lower ranked because I kind of added that criteria of trying to find a comparable cost, and more often than not did not rank as high as some of the ones on the option 1.
Are these projects that we had not gotten to with the funding that we initially set out?
That is correct. I think, as always, I come with a group of projects, that are ranked based on our criteria, and then typically as we have funds, we put that funds toward those projects. These are the same scenario, and it's, as we reallocate the money back into street resurfacing, I'll come back to you, and future meetings, the same thing. I'll come back to you with a group of projects using our criteria. Here's the next 10 to 20 projects, and then as like now we have the 4.9 million, we would just kind of go through and say, okay, I can get these 2 or 3 projects, and then we would vote to recommend those projects. But yes, these are projects that we just haven't got to yet. In that rank of all the way to 100, we've chopped off a lot of projects with our 168 million. We've got a lot of projects, and you can look at that map. and it shows the spread of all the projects. We've done a lot of work. And so these are just more projects on down the list. And I just chose two different options, but yes, projects that don't have any funding allocated to it, and these would be the next projects that we would come back to this board and routinely try to pick with additional funds that we have available.
Seems like our commitment from the beginning, though, was to go based on numbers, and number one would be the highest priority.
Correct. Yep.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So it sounds like from other sources, there's $9 million to go towards resurfacing. It sounds like we're trying to prioritize a list of projects that that we're not on track to get to thus far.
Correct.
And then so whatever the difference from 9 million would be essentially additional money we would allocate from this body.
Correct.
Okay. So out of curiosity on the option one, then does it make sense, or let me know the logic? Because I get that you were just kind of putting together some options that might be more ideal, but would it make any sense just to stop once you got close to 9 million or a little over 9 million on this first list? I think I think I understand what you're doing, but I'm trying to understand the difference there.
Thank you, Mr. Sandino. Thompson, excuse me, let me get that little cold out of there. Eric Winger, Public Works Director. So what has happened here is that the City Council has identified an additional 9 million that they want to put towards street resurfacing, and they thought that this board would be best to make that decision. With the methodology that Brock already described, we are recommending that we take the highest priority projects. This board does have the funding to complete those. We are trying to go from the top of the list down. We have actually already, as a part of this board, finished up all of the original projects that were committed under the street resurfacing. So we're actually going into new projects that we didn't anticipate a couple of years ago. Either option will help us build more streets. The monies that are still remaining in better streets. So if we were to go with option 2 and potentially only allocate $400,000 towards this list of projects, there's still in excess of $4 million that we're going to come back with an additional recommendation next year for more projects. So I guess the question really for you is, would you like to do more high priority projects now and allocate the majority of the money that's available under Better Streets? Or do we want to just look at the second list, achieve a $9 million expenditure, and then we're going to come back to you with about $4 million more in projects in the spring?
Eric, would you not think that whatever costs are presently, they're going to continue to go up? Construction costs have not gone down since we've been formed.
So generally speaking, that is correct. We've actually seen pretty consistent pricing in our asphalt paving. We have not seen significant jumps in pricing in that line of work. We are seeing large increases in the building trades, though. So if we were part of the building construction program, there is a lot of concern there, but not as much concern on paving. We're seeing incremental increases. I don't want to say there's been no increase, but not the same that you hear through the industry and construction. We're continuing to bid contracts regularly. The contracts are coming in at pricing that has been very consistent throughout our program.
Thank you.
So the two options that you have, and again, we can answer additional questions, but they are just based on the ranked list. Top list is the highest priority. Bottom list is the list that most matches just about $9 million.
So it certainly makes sense to me to go just based on priority. The only potential difference for the $4 or so million would be if you expect some potential federal money from the new infrastructure bill coming in, looking for matching monies from the city where that $4 million might be useful.
So I think in addition to the Better Streets program, we obviously also have our bond dollars that are available. So even though Better Streets is coming to the conclusion of the sales tax program, we still have a very active bond program that can provide those additional dollars if necessary for matching funds and things in the future.
I appreciate that broader perspective. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I still got, I think, one question here. So thank you, because you provided some clarity for me to understand what we're doing. And I guess I'm just thinking about priority, which has been pretty consistent. It makes a lot of sense. Is there a reason why we wouldn't just prioritize this option 1 list through the 9 million maybe, and then some overage, and then kind of come back and see how far we go? And I'm asking mostly because there's a part of me that says that unless we really foresee like construction costs starting to escalate. I mean, if there's something that says that there's some headwind that's going to create that escalation, focus on priority, get as far as we can, see where we are, and then kind of keep going. That tends to make some sense to me. So that's why I'm asking about that list, about that approach with option one.
So again, I think we agree. We're also focused on priority. We need to spend all of the money. So at some point, again, we're going to run out of Better Street sales tax money, but just know that the bond program is going to pick up where the sales tax leaves off. We're going to go as far down that prioritized list citywide in future years as we can go. The list that's been presented here was to really try to show, trying to hit most areas of the city, not just concentrating on one area over another. So what you'll see is a pretty good spread of projects that are citywide on that top list was one of the other goals, and that's why it's a little more expensive.
I have one other question that's a bit of an aside. If you guys don't know the answer, it's fine. But I know that there's a lot of work happening on that South Lincoln, which is on your option 2, I noticed here. Can you tell me, maybe this is as an example, just because I'm familiar that South Lincoln / Central going to Southeast had a lot of drainage, I think, and some other work. So what would this cover versus what is anticipated to be built back as that road is repaired from the other infrastructure work that's taking place there?
Typically in our resurfacing, it's going to cover mostly resurfacing. If there is some small drainage aspects that we need to try to address, we will as a part of the street resurfacing money, but if it gets into a larger scale, I've brought back to you before some large-scale boxes and large-scale bridge work that needed to be done. If there was something really outside the box, we would bring it back and talk to the board about it.
Okay, so I think I got a different question, but it might be better offline. So what I'm saying is I just know from sort of driving that area, there's massive work taking place right now, and the street's been torn up for, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 months, if not longer. So I was just curious if what gets built back is gonna then require resurfacing. Does that make sense? Like there's massive construction going on in that particular stretch.
So the large project that's in the area is actually a sanitary sewer project and not a drainage project. So it's being done by the utilities department.
Okay.
It's not road related and it's not drainage related. It's sanitary sewer.
Okay.
And they will put it back, the way it was.
So then with that, in theory, and again, I'm sorry for the line of question if it's not helpful, but in theory, would that then reduce the resurfacing costs? Since I imagine there is some resurfacing going to take place. I mean, the intersection at like Central and 15th has been torn up, shifted all over the place, that kind of thing. So would that mean that it would reduce potentially the resurfacing need, or?
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And typically what we find on our resurfacing projects, and that's where we see some of the overages too, is we get to milling process. Mm-hmm. You hear about base repair, you hear about the soft spots that we have to go into and fix before we can actually put the final surfacing on. That area obviously will have had all the base repair done prior to us getting there for the resurfacing, so it would be less expensive.
Eric, one more question. How does this relate to funds from MAPS 4? Are these projects that if we are able to do this, they would not be done? There's going to be new projects that obviously will come forth from MAPS.
So MAPS 4 doesn't include any street resurfacing projects. So MAPS 4 includes a lot of trail and sidewalk, but no street resurfacing. It would be our 2017 bond program that will lead the resurfacing program for the next 4 to 5 years in Oklahoma City. And then a future bond program would then likely pick up from the 2017 bond. So it's going to be bond funds for resurfacing, not MAPS 4.
So there's no resurfacing dollars in MAPS 4?
No.
Okay, thank you.
From a project management or administrative standpoint, are there advantages or efficiencies to us allocating more monies to more projects now as opposed to, say, trickling them along? And then on sort of a similar note, if we do allocate a huge amount to just resurfacing, is there a lot of overlap in the construction company landscape that would, say, limit how many engineers or equipment might be used for trails or other types of projects?
So I think to answer the first question, I mean, looking at the citizen survey again, the resident survey that was received this year, the street conditions remain the #1 resident priority. So obviously we're looking at those worst streets first, and that's how our system has always been based. As we fix the worst streets, we're making those worst streets the best streets, and our condition ratings, the PCI score continues to increase in Oklahoma City. So if we do projects that are further down the priority list, the condition of streets actually isn't elevating itself as quickly as fixing the worst streets first. And the worst streets cost the most. They're the ones that require the additional base repair, and they're the ones that require sometimes a complete reconstruction. But they're also the streets, based on the prioritization, that are not just the worst, but they have the highest traffic, and they also are receiving the most work orders by city crews. So being able to take care of those worst streets then is taking care of a street that's high traffic, and it also reduces the amount of time that the crews are having to go back and make the repairs versus a lower priority street that's down on that list. Now, if the board were to opt for option 2, we would likely, with the bond program, then go and look at funding the projects that are in option 1. It's just they wouldn't be a part of the $9 million, and they wouldn't be a part of the additional funds from this board. They're not projects that won't be done. It's just a matter of when they'll be done. So we're coming to you today just to ask that this is one consideration. We'd like to look at this board. We're using the board's methodology for the ranking of streets. And if we want to follow the prioritization model and the funding is available for you to recommend option 1, that is the preferred option. But it's up to the board to make that decision. The council would like to hear from you on the recommendation. This would then go to them for a final approval.
And I think what I'm trying to get at is from a supply chain aspect, from a competitor standpoint, from a project management standpoint, are there additional efficiencies gained by having, say, 15 road projects under Better Street, Safer City versus just 10 under Better Street, Safer City and nothing, or 10 under Better Streets and another 5 under Bond? Are there efficiencies by having it all lumped together here?
So in-house in Public Works, we've actually already kind of worked that out. We do have staff dedicated to each program, but there are also overlaps and they coordinate together. So there's really no added efficiency to whether it's bond or sales tax. We're using the same contracts to complete that work, and we're using the same contractors to do it as well. So it really, at this point, it doesn't matter.
Okay, thanks. I see no reason not to go with option 1.
Any more questions?
So just to be clear, this is for option 1.
So moved and seconded. Please vote on accepting option number 1. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Mike Clark.
Okay. Item 3B1 will provide project updates for the street enhancement projects. As described to the board previously, the Northwest 10th and Vermont Street Enhancement Project is complete, and since our last meeting, it has been finally accepted by the City Council. We anticipate pending budget closeouts for this project will return approximately $350,000 from the budget to the overall street enhancement category allocation for future assignment. The Northwest 39th Street Enhancement Project continues moving forward, and we are currently transitioning from the concrete phase of the project to landscaping and then asphalt. Save for the uncertainty of an AT&T utility conflict, we expect to be able to schedule a final inspection shortly after the first of the year. The Paseo, Walker, Portland, and Stockyard Street Enhancement projects are all 3 working on final plans, and we hope to be able to bid these projects in the first quarter of '22. A traffic study for the Automobile Alley Street Enhancement Project has been completed, and we plan to bring the preliminary report to your next meeting for consideration. We have also communicated to the board that the Northeast 23rd Street Enhancement Project is thought to be underfunded and is therefore a prime candidate for additional funding allocation. We believe the outcome of the progress reports presented to you on these other street enhancement projects will allow us to accurately forecast the resources that will be available as part of the Northeast 23rd Street Enhancement Project for funding, design, and construction. The Britton Old Town Street Enhancement Project was the last street enhancement project to be recommended by the board and approved by the City Council, but it is in the midst of a scoping exercise with district leadership, and a preliminary report will be forthcoming in spring of '22. I will address the Plaza District, Northwest 10th Council to Rockwell, and Meridian Northwest 16th to 26th shortly, but I will be happy to try to answer any questions you have now.
So one question, with regard to the Britton District scoping activities, who is involved and how is the outreach done for those types of meetings?
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Carfine, would you say that again, please?
Yeah, sorry. For the Britton District Street Enhancement scoping activities, who is included in that? Is it purely, say, residents and business owners, or are visitors to the district, shoppers to the district also included?
It has been with the district leadership.
Okay.
We've had a couple of Teams meetings with them and then direct communication with them, so it's an ongoing process.
Okay.
Susan Atkinson with the Planning Department is here, and she has been our lead on that and has done an excellent job of providing feedback from the district.
Okay. Thanks. Certainly it's an important bike corridor, the connection through the village to Hefner and further east. So I'm, of course, very curious how those discussions and scoping are going.
It will be a key project just because of the location between various projects.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item 3B2 seeks a receipt and recommendation on the preliminary report for the Plaza District Street Enhancement Project. Oklahoma City has a number of eclectic neighborhood districts that emphasize the cultural identity and resources of the surrounding area. One of the most unique of these is the Plaza District, named for the historic Plaza Theater that was constructed on Northwest 16th Street in 1935. Propelled by the Plaza District Association and the Plaza Business Alliance, the area from Penn to Classen has transformed over the last 21 years from dilapidated and crime-riddled to thriving and inspiring. Today, Plaza District offers a local creative experience unlike any other found in the state. A previous streetscape was completed in the Plaza District in 2003. Understanding the current Better Street, Safer City budget is modest at $459,306, community leaders targeted pedestrian access throughout the district as their top priority. A base bid has been developed that focuses on upgrading sidewalks and ramps, identifying crosswalks, and removing obstructions from the pedestrian realm. Ancillary concerns involve maintenance-type activities and enhanced identification efforts. We anticipate construction can start in spring of '22, and all construction will be coordinated around day-to-day access, as well as the monthly Live on the Plaza and annual Plaza Festival events. I will be glad to try to answer any questions that you have.
So one of the things that kind of surprised me with this preliminary report was the idea of removing the planters from the sidewalks. And I think I saw in the report that it would open up opportunity for street trees and things of that nature. What would the sort of plan for those street trees be? Would they be, say, new trees that would take a couple of years to actually grow and provide a lot of shade?
Mr. Carfane, there are several areas that unfortunately trees have died and have been removed, so what's really left is just a stump. Then particularly on the south side of the street, some of the raised planters there really present an obstruction to pedestrians moving on the sidewalk, especially when coupled with some of the outdoor dining areas that have been established. So again, with the district prioritizing pedestrian movement, I think the primary look at removing the raised planters would be there on the south side, But overall, there would be an effort that once those are gone, to go back into where trees have been lost and reestablish trees in the district. So it's certainly not an intent to remove trees, but rather kind of reestablish that street enhancement project that occurred in the early 2000s.
Okay. From my personal experience, and forgive me for waxing on a little bit about personal, so my family absolutely loves the greenery that those planters provide. It is impromptu seating. My daughter absolutely loves climbing on them, and it creates a very easy environment for my daughter to stay entertained, not just with the climbing on the planters, but also learning about plants and landscaping and things of that nature. So I'd love to see some, as those get say removed, an idea of keeping it more entertaining for families, so to speak. One idea, the Saturdays last fall where the 16th Street was completely closed to cars and open to pedestrians and diners and things of that nature. If I recall, business owners really loved that. And so perhaps moving these planters from the sidewalk into the street and making it permanently closed to car traffic and open to pedestrians would really help the pedestrian liveliness as well as pedestrian throughput. So just some ideas, my personal desires with the district that I live so close to.
I think you're actually probably closer to the district philosophy than you probably think. I think in looking back at what they established as a base bid, they do want to go in and repair some of the existing planters where cast stones have become loose or maybe bricks have been broken. So they are wanting to keep that. I think with the nod to some of the festival type activities that go on, they want to repair existing electricity that maybe is no longer functioning. So really, I think they are viewing it really as kind of a freshening and a reestablishment of many of the things that people have enjoyed about it.
Okay. Would there be a potential opportunity when say, creating ADA ramps or improving the sidewalk pavement to inlay bricks so that there's a permanent hopscotch installation? I know that was always a big hit during the last open Saturdays last fall. Just a thought.
This is probably a target of staff, but we are hoping that we can find the resources to pair the street enhancement project with a resurfacing of Northwest 16th Street from Penn to Classen. We've been fortunate to resurface already to the west. That would kind of finish that out. But that would allow us to go in and do kind of wholesale ADA upgrades and look at areas where maybe pavers either were not the best option or they were a good idea and they just need to be reestablished. But we are looking at that as on kind of a parallel track, thinking that we can enhance the budget that is available for the street enhancement project.
Okay, I appreciate that. One last little clarification of city organization and responsibility. This weekend, my family was camping and rock climbing in the Wichitas, and of course, we stopped by Medicine Park for amazing burgers afterwards. Downtown Medicine Park is similarly narrow to the Plaza District. There are crosswalks about every 100 feet, and each crosswalk is paired with speed bumps. And the speed limit is 10 miles an hour, and it feels extremely comfortable driving through, as well as walking through, walking my dog through, walking my daughter through. Certainly the street enhancement project focuses on infrastructure design. Is there a corollary, or is it the Traffic Commission that would then evaluate potentially updating speed limits?
Those have been on the wish list as well, and it's kind of part of the current evaluation for the Plaza District street enhancement, but that has been important to the district and is being evaluated.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a special interest in this particular group. I was on the original Plaza board back when there wasn't much on the Plaza. And as my wife would not forgive me, the thing we knew the most was the name of the hookers. Anyway, it's interesting. This is a very early project for cityscapes. The projects that we're working on now is an enhancement of those things. It's held up pretty well. I have to laugh because the reason that it's so walkable is benign neglect. The guy that was supposed to actually work with the people who were in businesses there spent all of his time designing the Plaza logo. So we had the original architect's wide sidewalks made it what it is today. So it's interesting. I particularly like his take on where it is now, because I've seen it go from nothing to living through that streetscape process, which is pretty significant because it was all new everything, to where we are now. So it's kind of good to go back and reevaluate, and I'm sure that the people who are working on this project have had a lot of input. It's a significant area. The one thing that has not changed is it's still a major thoroughfare. A lot of people still drive down the street, some of them slowly and some of them not so slowly. Most of them do a lot of U-turning just so they can find a parking place. But anyway, it's good to see this back, and the things that are being done, a lot of those are maintenance. The trees, we really did lose a lot of trees during last winter, and there are a lot of stumps, as you say. So I'm kind of glad to see us coming back and refining what's been done. But it was a significant project as far as streetscapes go in our city. So
I think Oklahoma City is fortunate that we have really a number of great districts. As staff working with Plaza, they seem to have a young, energetic, committed board, and I think that they have really done well with what was kind of established in that early streetscape, and they are looking at this just to enhance that and maybe kind of continue to set the stage for future growth there. So it has been really kind of inspiring to work with them. They have taken their stewardship very seriously.
And one last little point on this particular slide, that last bullet on the base bid, of course, caught my eye. Remove bicycle racks and bollards. So I trust that is removing bicycle racks from the pedestrian area on the sidewalk. And given past Live on the Plaza experiences where REI or other businesses host a bike parking valet type thing with 15 bike racks that hold so many bikes on Blackwelder, how popular those bike racks have been. I trust that removing the bicycle racks from the sidewalk will end up moving them into a permanent home in, say, a parking space where a single car parking space is capable of supporting 20 bikes.
I think you see then the first bullet point under alternate bid. I think they wanted to consider alternate designs and alternate locations. Certainly didn't want to delete bike racks. They just wanted to look at how to utilize those more efficiently.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? This requires a vote. Please cast your vote. Thank you, that passes.
Okay, item B3, item 3B3, asks for a receipt and recommendation on the Northwest 10th Council to Rockwell Street Enhancement Project. In contrast to a streetscape within a developed district, the street enhancement project on Northwest 10th Street from Council to Rockwell is much more about connecting pedestrian access points than placemaking. A previous construction project installed sidewalks on the south side of 10th, but several encroachments and limited public right-of-way discouraged their placement to the north. Still, a visit to the site allows one to easily identify the preference paths created by pedestrians traversing the area. ADA-compliant ramps, street and driveway approaches, and sidewalks ranging from 5 to 6 feet in width will be constructed along the full width of the project, and all bus facilities will be upgraded. Unique to the Northwest 10th project is the need to rebuild 2 retaining walls to allow the above to be accomplished. The project is adequately funded at $600,475, and 2 of the 3 required easements have been received, approved, and filed with the court. I will try to answer any questions that you have.
Why is this under street enhancements instead of sidewalks?
I think it was maybe a personal take, Mr. Dixon. I think that it was considered an important project to connect places along the street. I mean, there is a school nearby. There are obviously businesses nearby. I think it was considered a street enhancement project. It's just much more akin to a sidewalk project in appearance than something that you would see in Plaza District or Stockyards or within kind of an organized district. Again, I have benefit of Susan Atkinson from the Planning Department being here. Susan is our liaison on both 10th and Meridian, and she could perhaps offer more insight that I don't have.
Thank you, Michael. Greetings, CNE Board. Thank you. The West 10 district is one of our commercial districts, this area. It is a different sort of district. Obviously, it's very linear and takes up miles in length compared to the Plaza District. There was some hope when this project was originally scoped that we might be able to add some modest enhancements along this area. I think at the end of the day, all parties are in agreement that providing sidewalk where there is none and that kind of connectivity that Michael just described. This is a busy transit route. The number 38 bus route is heavily used through here. That it really just is about connecting places. And so I think it's kind of more of an administrative decision that it was classified as a sidewalk or as a street enhancement project rather than purely sidewalk. But I think the proposal now is that it really is for sidewalk improvements. Is there more I could tell you about this?
Yeah, no, it seems like a worthwhile project. It's really more in my mind on allocating dollars from street enhancements to do a sidewalk project. So I'm not saying it's not a worthy project.
Yeah. So yeah, and so I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Are you saying that in response to conversations with the district, the commercial district in the area, this is where things landed based on the resources that were there, or was this sort of the scope? And I'm not as familiar with this particular street enhancement project, but I don't know, was the scope initially wider than this, or at least anticipated to be broader than just the sidewalks?
I'm sorry, I'm struggling a little bit to understand the question. The district did not have, although we have visited with the district leadership, and this is a pretty strong district with really good engagement from business and property owners. They did not have a lot of granular input. We explored some possibility of doing an enhancement at 10th and Rockwell, specifically because that's kind of a busy corner. The adjacent property owner was not amenable to that, so we didn't pursue it. That would have been the most specific opportunity for enhancement. You know, as Michael mentioned, there's also the need for a couple of retaining walls just because of some grade issues to the west end of this project. So, you know, that retaining walls can be done in a manner that you could consider an enhancement to the sidewalk environment. But in terms of the sort of needed street enhancements that you would expect in a more compact commercial district, this is just not that. This is just not that. It's a very linear corridor, and the fact that we brought sidewalks initially with the 2007 GEO bond to half of the street, this is really about adding sidewalks to the other half. One of the things we definitely saw as an unintended consequence when we first added sidewalks funded by the bond was that people started walking, but that also meant that they needed to get across the street. So this is giving us an opportunity to kind of complete a project in a way through a corridor that we've been working on for 15 years.
Yep. So thank you for that response, and I would agree with Mr. Dixon this bit. So I think what's being proposed makes sense for the area. It makes sense, but it does kind of strike me that this seems like something that should. I mean, these are the sort of cases I think we would make for having really good sidewalks in a city that didn't build sidewalks for a long time. So I guess even as you talk about some of the things that this would do, I mean, when I think about street enhancements in this type of application, because I think we will have some other street enhancements that are still sort of more longer corridors than being this compact. But I do think about crossings, about sort of signage that identifies where things are, and even where it's beneficial, some traffic calming if there is a lot of bus routes. I know in some of these districts where, let's say, you have more people who would need or utilize public transit, getting from one side of the street to the other to catch the bus going one way or the other. I mean, those are the types of things I guess I would tend to see these supporting, and so this seems like it is, in fact, a sidewalk project, not a street enhancement project.
Michael, am I right that you said we anticipate upgrades of all bus infrastructure through here? So that will be planned and baked into the project budget? So where we have benches and poles, for example, we'll have a shelter.
So, Mr. Thompson, and if I'm trying to maybe sense the board's thought a little bit, obviously, when we bring a preliminary report to the board and to city council, we're saying, this is how we've understood the project. We feel like the design works in the budget, and we're asking for the ability to move forward. If it would be the board's pleasure, and you would like to see us now, as we transition from preliminary report to final plans, to kind of go back, give Susan the opportunity to validate with the district, have we missed anything? Is there something that is important to you, even if it, for instance, took us outside of budget? As Brock said, we could certainly come back to the board and ask for your consideration on unallocated funds or something else, but kind of keep the board updated on this project as it moves forward and see if there are additional opportunities there.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. I appreciate that. And it does look like, I mean, at least for where you are today, there's a little wiggle room. And again, I don't want to be sort of the only one talking. In fact, I think Mr. Dixon kind of brought this up as well. If we're talking about street enhancements, I mean, even if it's a more linear, sort of kind of, city block to city block, Rockwell to council, I guess I just want to make sure that we're doing things that we feel like are going to enhance that opportunity, that go beyond what sidewalks will do, which I think sidewalks in and of themselves are an enhancement, and definitely a connecting piece of infrastructure for pedestrians, and they do all the things we just talked about. But being a little more clear about the measures that will improve or enhance this area, this district, and this strip for the businesses and for either pedestrian uses and just to create interest. Just seems like it would make sense, whether that's thinking about crosswalks, thinking about the bus shelters and things of that nature, just to make this street sort of enhanced above what would be a street that has sidewalks on the north and the south ends, which I think is something we kind of more aspire to in a lot of the arterials today anyway.
Well, and it's an appropriate question, Mr. Thompson, because you guys are going to see this on the very next item. Meridian really kind of lays out very similar to 10th Street, and if you look at our list of street enhancement projects, those are probably the two outliers because they don't fall within an established district that, you're kind of looking at it in a different context. So the thoughts and the questions are entirely appropriate, and we're happy to take the pleasure of the board.
Thanks.
Jeff Butler, Planning Director. Just to quickly clarify, so in addition to what's been said, street enhancement project, mainly sidewalk, also transportation or transit improvements. So the reason it's classified as a street enhancement, so we had the street enhancement category, and it's really meant to be kind of anything that needs to happen on the street. And some, as come before this board, some are the full service street enhancement, landscaping, everything. One of the reasons we put something in a street enhancement project is so that we could do more than a sidewalk if we needed to. You know, crosswalks, transit improvements, you know, if there were, you know, some driveway, you know, consolidations that we needed to do, we could do that as well. Just, it gives us the ability to be more flexible. The other reason is because we have different, the sidewalk projects are typically prioritized differently, and there were, Bike Walk OKC is kind of the main way that we do that, and we made some enhancements to that prioritization. But the street enhancement also, that kind of bucket gives us a way to do things that weren't necessarily coming out of the citywide sidewalk prioritization. So we had done a planning process over here a couple years back that identified a need here, and it wasn't really associated with the citywide bike walk prioritization scheme. It was a separate planning process, and so it kind of came up through the street enhancement method, because if it had come through the sidewalk, it may not have been prioritized, may not have been built. But because we were doing some work over here, this is just one of the things that we needed to do to enhance this district. So hopefully that provides a little bit of clarification. But having said that, if the board feels like there are some additional things that need to be looked at here, we can certainly go back and do that and take another look and see if there are additional upgrades. It would likely involve, as Mike said, a budget increase, but there may be some things we could do with a modest increase.
Yeah, and I'll just echo Mr. Thompson's comments as well, that sidewalks here are certainly a big enhancement that are necessary, but I'd certainly love to see opportunities to go further where we can. I didn't see any particular traffic analysis of the corridor in the report, but I do have to give a shout out to ACOG. Their interface for traffic counts is really easy to pull up right here. So in particular, I'm seeing between 12 and 13,000 cars per day on this 4-lane arterial, which is small enough that FHWA guidelines say it should be considered to reduce to a 3-lane configuration. I'll go further and mention, I don't have the specific dates or numbers off the top of my head, but there have been a number of pedestrian fatalities as a result of incidents with cars in this corridor as well. So not just sidewalks along the corridor, but safe crossings as well are key here. From a commercial interest, you are really, this commercial corridor is really close to the West River Trail and Overholser. And from personal experience, it's great to just go a couple of blocks off of 10th to get a meal or get a coffee or something during my bike ride. So enhancing that connectivity will really help with bike tourism. I know a number of bikers as well as tourists who visit OKC love doing the entire, essentially circumnavigating the city by bike. And signage and access to food and drink and whatnot are always in the top of their minds, while also being safe. So I'd really, really love to see opportunities to go even further with this if we can.
So with that, what's before the board today is to receive and recommend the report. If the board's pleasure is for us to take back, kind of reevaluate and resubmit again, we would certainly do so. If you want to move the item forward and have us kind of monitor for additional opportunities, we would do that and keep the board informed as well. We're happy to follow your lead.
I need to know which direction the board wants to go.
Well, we need to either, I guess, table this for future discussion, or we need to
So
make a recommendation and
if I could,
pass this.
yeah, I think it's a preliminary report. I appreciate you guys' feedback because it helps me to understand it. I mean, hopefully some of the things we've said are helpful in what's being considered here. So I'd be comfortable moving the motion.
Very good. Seems wise. It's moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. It's passed. I think next item is 3B4.
And just Quickly, Mr. Thompson, please don't ever question that the board's input isn't extremely helpful. We really value the day-to-day input that y'all offer, as well as the input we receive at the meeting, so thank y'all very much. Again, just as I kind of predicted, item 3B4 is Meridian 16th to 26th. It's going to look very, very similar to the 10th Street Enhancement Project. In this case, sidewalk already existed on the east side of Meridian, as well as the area north of 23rd, between 23rd and 26th. Because of that existing sidewalk, it does reduce the funding need to complete a build-out of the identified area, and we felt that allowed latitude in better addressing a pedestrian connection to E.B. Jeffrey Park on the southeast corner of 16th and Meridian. Again, evidence exists to the current travels of pedestrians along the corridor. Just as 10th Street did, Meridian also places ADA compliant ramps, street and driveway approaches, and sidewalks ranging from 5 to 6 feet in width along the full length of the project, and then all bus facilities will also be improved. This project is funded adequately at $729,148, and just like the 10th Street project, 2 of the 3 required easements have been received, approved, and filed with the court. Again, Susan is our district representative at this location as well. If you have anything to offer, Susan.
Thanks again, Michael. This project is interesting in that I've often described this area, which by the way is the Windsor District. So this is one of our 2 districts there adjacent in this west of I-44. I sort of often describe this area as having accidental walkability, and by that I mean a scale that is walkable, but it wasn't built with sidewalks. So the opportunity that we have, particularly along this main arterial of Meridian, is to add sidewalks. This is actually a former transit corridor. I think we would like to be building demand in the future that this could be considered by Embark as once again a transit corridor. But this is just giving us the opportunity to connect some significant destinations in the area. We had to work, of course, within a budget, but being able to get people north and south along Meridian, particularly to all the commercial resources at 23rd and Meridian, is very important to us. 23rd Street remains one of the city's busiest bus corridors. That's the number 23 route with extended service 7 days a week into the evening. So this is just, again, we're adding pedestrian resources as we can afford it, where we can, based on some of the studies that Jeff Butler just mentioned we had done in the area earlier, and this is just one of those projects. So happy to answer any other questions about the Windsor District or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one other element that I didn't see in this report was an assessment of current traffic conditions or injuries. I am seeing a total cost of about $210,000, but a fixed limit of construction of $730,000. So there's about $500,000 still to work with there. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. January 4th of this year, so I'll back up. This is, I agree, a very important corridor for connectivity. The bikeway along 19th is fantastic for me to get from the Plaza District to that intersection where there's fantastic Indian food, as well as the only Walgreens I've been to that hasn't rejected me for COVID testing on drive-through, even though it's national policy for Walgreens to accept that. Anywho, additionally, there is a bike network idea that makes 16th pretty safe to bike on as well. So 16th to 23rd is fantastic, a very important corridor. And I'm wondering what we might be able to do to just extend the scope a little bit. On January 4th of this year, a woman was biking north on Meridian and almost made it to 16th. At 14th, she was hit and killed by a car. So I'm wondering if we can go just a little bit further to look into lighting alternatives or what else we might be able to do just to improve accessibility from the neighborhoods to those bike and pedestrian corridors as well. To just look a little bit beyond the scope of 16th to 23rd.
And again, I think you're right, Mr. Carfang, because of that existing network that was in place, there is right now kind of a large cushion in that budget. So I think as we discussed back on the 10th Street project, we can certainly go back and kind of reevaluate where some of those points start and stop.
I appreciate that. So I had a couple of questions. Does this include any anticipated enhancements at the intersection of 23rd Meridian?
I think 23rd and Meridian, a lot of the infrastructure was already there, Mr. Thompson. I think as you got towards kind of the north end of those project limits, we found a lot of the improvements to already be ADA compliant and kind of be in place. Maybe kind of back to Mr. Carfang's point, I think as you got farther south, you were missing more of that infrastructure. But certainly we can go back and kind of revalidate the entire corridor.
Yeah, I was just, so I think this is great. I actually think it may reinforce at least some of the observations or comments or what was driving some of my comments previously, because I do think that this is an intersection that for mass transit, obviously for the vehicles that pass through here, and then for the fair amount of people who live in the surrounding areas, just things we can do to make sort of all these things come together. But I also think that that intersection has some interesting dynamics to it where, again, if we're thinking about street enhancements, I think that the sidewalks and the improvement to the sidewalks, a great element, but then also thinking about ways to create just again, interactions with where our bus stops are, where those kind of, where those opportunities are, and anything to sort of increase people's awareness of whether it's lighting and things of that nature, increase people's awareness. I mean, there's a lot of things happening at the intersection that I think are great. If we're doing a street enhancement project, I mean, that being an opportunity to maybe improve the things that are happening at that intersection. I mean, you've got a weird sort of, I don't know if it's cul-de-sac, whatever the case is, coming off the southeast corner of that intersection. Just things to sort of set the tone for how you interact with this corridor that we are going to put this infrastructure in. Particularly seeing the difference in the budget and what your estimates are so far. It just feels like there are, again, some great opportunities there to make this street and this intersection a little bit more effective for all the people who travel through it.
Mr. McKnight, this would be similar to 10th. The item is written as a receipt and recommend. We would be happy to take that and continue refining the project and bring it back as needed to the board, or we could go back and revise and then bring it back for your consideration again, however the board would like to do that.
What does the board want to do? Move forward. Okay. It's been moved. It's been seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. Next item would be 3C, sidewalk projects.
Item. Went too far. Item 3C1 is sidewalks. I'll do a quick update. I think the majority of all projects are complete, if not substantially complete. The major project is the big red one there is downtown sidewalks. I think in October we were close to 50%. We've made some progress. I think we're probably about 75% complete at this time. And that's really the only major project we have in construction. The rest are either being finalized and closed out. If no questions, we'll move on to item 3D1, bicycle facilities.
Bicycle infrastructure project updates make up item 3D1. As reported in past meetings, the Deep Fork, Villa North, and Independence Grand bicycle facilities projects are all under design. Work on the Chartel project, as well as the west and east ends of the General Pershing project, have been completed. Perhaps the biggest updates within the bicycle facilities category lie with the middle section of General Pershing, i.e. Main Street from Penn to Western and Lottie Avenue. Work is wrapping up on the petitioning process of stakeholders on Main Street regarding the removal of parking on the north side of the street to allow for a 3-lane section with dedicated bicycle lanes to be created. It is anticipated the petition will be presented to the Traffic Commission in early '22. Likewise, the petitioning process is being readied for stakeholders on Lottie to remove parking in various areas to facilitate the implementation of dedicated bicycle lanes along that route. It is expected that Lottie will feature the city's first parking protected bicycle lanes, and the petition will be presented to the Traffic Commission in spring of '22. Lottie, Spring Lake, Southwest 25th, Indiana Linwood, Wilshire, and Villa Central will be addressed on subsequent items, but I am glad to take any questions you might have on bicycle facilities projects.
One quick question on Lottie. I recall for the Northwest 23rd Street street enhancement, I think bond project, there was a detailed amount of analysis of how frequently the parallel parking, at least on the western portion of that project, was used, and most of that on-street parallel parking was fairly underutilized, which led to an influence on the designs. With regard to the Lottie project, do we have a similar understanding of how much that parking is currently used before requesting public input?
I think, Mr. Carfang, our observation on Lottie is that a good portion of the parking that occurs now maybe wasn't parking established through ordinance. So as part of the bicycle project itself, I think the effort will be to go in, utilize public right-of-way efficiently to meet the needs of the businesses and the neighborhoods, and then to correct all that through the appropriate Traffic Commission and City Council ordinance process.
Okay, thanks.
All right, are these just questions about your status update, or we're gonna go through the items 2, 3, 4, and 5 individually?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Okay. So if you don't mind, I'll transition. So item 3D2, we are asking you to consider budget closeouts for the Wilshire and Villa Central projects. And all of today's consideration items in the bicycle infrastructure category actually result from the board's approval of the Southeast 59th Street project last month. So in looking at 3D2, as a reminder, the city's Parks Department has proposed funding, designing, and constructing Wilshire as an off-road trail connecting the Overhoser-Hefner Trail to the new pedestrian bridge spanning Northwest Expressway. Villa Central cannot be fully funded with resources available at present in the bicycle facilities category, and staff has requested the opportunity to remove it from the approved project list as they evaluate alternative actions for moving forward. The same scenario actually exists for Indiana Linwood, but staff has recently submitted it to ACOG as a CMAQ grant candidate. So we are recommending leaving it on the list until the outcome of that application is known. So the item is to recommend 2 budget closeouts, and I will try to answer any questions you have.
So certainly from my neighbors and other residents in my ward, I hear the most about either Northwest 30th from Penn to May, or Villa Central.
Okay.
So can you give me some insight on what might be some future actions to ensure that that project eventually happens?
I think a couple of things, Mr. Carfang. Villa Central is identified currently as Villa, which then transitions to Agnew, but essentially from Northwest 10th all the way down to Southwest 29th.
Right.
I think as staff looked at it, we prioritized the connection at least from Northwest 10th to, say, the Oklahoma River, and then felt we had other opportunities maybe to look at that south portion, maybe as part of the Stockyards Street Enhancement Project, or maybe we don't have a perfect plan yet. We just weren't willing to give up on Villa Central. It was important to us too. We just felt it was important because we didn't have that project funded, not to have it on the approved list, but we want to continue working on it and then come back to the board with our opportunities.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good, thank you. Next item is 3D3.
Item 3D3 starts the first of 3 budget revisions to projects that are on the approved list. With the board's approval, Lottie, which was mentioned earlier as a project moving forward in a stakeholder petitioning process, will see its budget reduced. Lottie has already been submitted and approved for a CMAQ grant, but at the time the application was made, staff prepared a worst-case scenario budget that can now be reduced through a thorough pavement and traffic signal infrastructure evaluation. The reduction here would be from $1,149,459 down to $599,700. And I will try to answer any questions that the board might have.
I have a question. Have we seen the final proposed design here?
You have not, Mr.
Okay.
Thompson. So again, as the staff works kind of through those designs, that is a design that would come
Okay.
back to the board.
But this is what you were referencing earlier when we were talking about the parking protected, right? Being able to, okay, great. So obviously I'm very interested in the project because I think these bicycle projects are great. Also, this project happens to be in my ward. But thirdly, I think I would just want to say, for the benefit of that proposal, and I'm actually happy that we were able to get some additional funding, that I have this big dream of mine to see what I would sort of define as a complete street in Oklahoma City, where we have a street that incorporates sidewalks, protected bike lanes, and some vehicle infrastructure around that. And this seems like we'll have an opportunity to do some of those things. I want to see what happens when we can pull all those things together in a actually a pretty historic corridor. So I'm excited about that project, and just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed that sort of final scope that we're going to see put together.
No, sir, not at all. And in fact, we're going to talk about Spring Lake next, but when you look at that area of town, I think you have 2 unique projects. Obviously, Lottie, comes over and goes down all the way to Northeast 4th Street. Spring Lake starts up at Spring Lake and MLK, and then it gets all the way down to 13th Street. So I think, we kind of hear Mr. Carfang talk about the connections, and and getting from place to place. I think we're excited about both of those projects and the impact on the city overall.
This requires a vote, please. It's been moved and seconded. Please pass. Please make your selection.
And item 3D4 asks the board to consider an increase for the Spring Lake budget from $375,430 to $505,600. Although the Spring Lake project will benefit from a 2017 GO bond resurfacing project approved for the area bounded by Kelly, MLK, Northeast 36th, and Northeast 50th, a budget increase is necessary to address a required overlay of the pavement on Kelly between Culbertson and Northeast 26th. And again, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
It's been moved and seconded. Cast your vote. Item passes. Oh, sorry. Very good. Item passes. Next item is 3D5, I believe.
Okay. Item 3D5 addresses an increase on the Southwest 25th Street Bicycle Facilities Project from $150,000 to $332,450. Staff was able to provide some of the striping required for this project as part of a Better Street, Safer City residential resurfacing project in an area bounded by Santa Fe, Byers, Southeast 23rd, and Southeast 29th. But additional funds are needed to cover the cost of pavement markings and signs throughout the balance of the project. So with that, I would try to answer any questions that you might have.
A couple of weeks ago, I recently deviated on my commute based on some interesting construction that surprised me. So I ended up going, I think, from High to Robinson on 25th. And the new paint there already, even though it's not quite complete, is looking pretty fantastic. So I appreciate the work.
Again, a unique opportunity, I think, to use one project to help another, and our staff has done a good job of identifying those opportunities.
This has been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Thank you.
Very good. This passes. Next item is 3E, Trails.
And I'll give a quick status update of the trails. I think the majority of all the trails are substantially complete. There's one, the Oklahoma North River Trail is waiting on some I-44 bridge rehab. When that gets done in that area, we can move along and finish that section. I think the good news about the trails is we did have an open bid on the Hefner Trail behind the dam, and that did come in under budget, so we're excited. That's moving forward with going through City Council on December 21st, and then after that, hopefully in the beginning of the year, we'll start construction. And if there's no questions, we'll move on to
Doc,
item-
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I have a question.
Go
What
ahead.
is this status update on the signage that is supposed to be placed there at the Burt Cooper Trail?
Perfect timing. We will turn it over to Brandon Boydston in Parks, and we'll give you an update on the trail signage.
Oh,
Does
sorry.
that work?
Unintentional.
All right, Brandon Boydston, Oklahoma City Parks Department, Park Planning Development Manager. Good morning. So just a kind of a refresh for everybody that may have been involved earlier on, whenever the trail signage was put in place, and maybe new for some of you that have joined since then. But the citywide trail system has a master plan for signage so that everything is consistent, everything is complete and connects to itself. And so before you, that you see on the screen is kind of the overview of the different sign types that you will find along the trails. So anything from the large gateway signs that'll be at, prominent locations that to signify, this location is, the example here is a Hefner Overholser Trail. And so that would be kind of, several places along the trail that might be close to a parking location, a trailhead where you can access that trail from there. And then the type B and type C signs, those are the on-street signs, so that as you're driving down the road, you're like, okay, where am I supposed to go to get to this parking lot? And there'll be the typical street sign that's there that'll help direct you to one of our trail network connecting points. And so that'll kind of help users that are driving to a trail to get on the trails from there. And then there's several different signs that'll be on the trails themselves, the D-type signs, and those are two-sided, and so there's information on both sides of those. And that provides the trail users, kind of keeps them aware of where they're at, which trail they're on. And then also as part of this, there is trail markers, or as far as mile markers go, that'll be on those, the type D signs, as well as in the top right corner of that graphic, you can see that there is ground markings as well for mile marking. And so that way, as trail users are on the trail, and if there's ever a need for, emergency response or something like that, it's easier for somebody to say, well, I'm between this mile marker and this mile marker on this trail. And as these get brought into play, we'll coordinate with, our first responder folks to get them maps and information so that they will also know, well, what does that mean? And so that way it works well within itself. The project is split into two different funding sources. This is split between GO bond funds out of the 2017, as well as sales tax. And so there's just kind of a breakout of which trails and which signs are part of each one of those. Some examples of what the signboards will actually look like, or do look like. They are under fabrication right now. I got to have a couple pictures here at the end of this that shows the current construction of it. And so it's just an enlargement of what those sign panels look like. So the top is the B and C. That'll be the single pole type signs that are on the street, providing direction for users to get to the trails, where to park. And if there's a short connection that connects to an on-street facility, there'll be a transitional sign there. That's the type C. And then the other examples of the two different types of D signs that'll be on the trail themselves. There's trail etiquette on there, kind of reminding people of what to do to be safe and courteous to themselves as well as other users. Kind of the top things that are there that was worked with our Trails Advisory Board to kind of establish what the top issues were. And then there's also an overview map that'll be on those boards as well. And then there's an enlarged detail of "you are here" type of a sign or a map graphic, just to kind of keep everybody oriented as to if they're riding the trails and they want to try to get to the Adventure District, or if they want to try to get to Bricktown, those are the types of signs that will help them get to where they want to go. And also on those enlargements, on the enlargement map graphics, there is highlights of bus routes, nearby bus stops, on-street facilities. So it is the signs and the mapping for the trail system itself, but it's not isolated to that. It does indicate where you can continue your ride and your transportation and other methods. So obviously this doesn't continue over to on-street facilities, but it does lend a connection of how to get to those. So here's just kind of an example of using the Burt Cooper trail around Lake Hefner, of kind of where the different types of signs are going. There's a lot of information on here kind of to try to observe and to take in. So there's, let's see, let's find a good place to start. So on the south end of the Burt Cooper Loop is where the Will Rogers Trail connects in there at Meridian. There are several sign types that show up there. You can see on the map graphic there, there's the type B, type A, and type D. And so the A is, again, the big, large sign, so that's kind of the entry, because that is a prominent entry to that trail system there. And then there's there's two different type D signs that are there, making those connections between the Will Rogers Trail and connecting into the Burt Cooper Trail, getting everybody oriented on that. And then the type B signs, those will be on the street themselves, providing direction of, turn here to gain, access to the trail, to park. And then also right next to that, just a little ways up screen or north on your map, you'll see a type E sign. That's the ground level mile marker type signs. So those are on all of our trails as well. And again, just another example of how these signs lay in. This would just, kind of the Oklahoma River Trail, the south side. Again, you have the type D that's on several locations as you move through the trail, so you can kind of keep track of where you're at. Also, each of those signs, again, has those rules etiquettes. That way, if somebody jumps in at one point, they're not missing the signs, so that there's multiple opportunities for that to be in front of people, just as a general reminder. A lot of times people, if they're new to the trail use, they might not know what some of the etiquette procedures are, and so those signs are just a great opportunity to get that information in front of them. And then here are some pictures of the construction that is taking place now. So the image on the left, that is the base for the large gateway signs, and so it has a stone base on it, and then there'll be a metal cabinet that sits on top of that pylon that's there, and so that's how that kind of sets up. And the metal in this it has aluminum back to it with a painted finish on part of it that almost looks like a Corten or a natural rusting patinaed metal, so it has a contrasting finish to it. And then the image on the right is it's what they're working on in the process of putting down the mile markers that are on the ground level. And so the portion that goes across the trail, that's actually lost the term, a heat applied thermoplast. And so it's kind of neat, it comes out in sheets. And so they can just lay the whole thing out, and then they heat apply it, and so it actually will bond and adhere to the surface of the trail. And then on the side, closest to you on the picture that's there, you can kind of see there's a circle cut out on that stone. And so there's medallions that will go in those cutouts that'll be flush, that will also have the name of the trail and what mile or partial mile that you are on. And so that way, instead of waiting just for every mile, somebody wants to get out and do, half mile, quarter mile, something like that. So there's incremental markings that are out there as well. So that's kind of the current status of where it's at. We have, I believe, most of the foundations and footings are in for most of the signs. And I know they're all in for the Burt Cooper, the West River Trail. Most of them are in for the Will Rogers Trail. I think they're waiting on a couple again with the coordinating with the resurfacing as well as the I-44 project. So it's kind of a bit of a coordination effort that's there. And then most of the foundations and footings are in for the Lake Draper Trail, and they're working on Katy Trail. They've started applying the mile markers for the Burt Cooper and kind of working back around that way as well. So the actual metal cabinets for the signs themselves, those are under fabrication right now. And so once those are all complete, they will start setting those signs in place. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see everybody's response to it, because right now it's just the footings and things, and people have forgotten about the holes that were dug on the trail that, we had, calls and concerns about, what's going on right next to the trail. And so, those have kind of left everybody's minds, but, all of a sudden there's going to be these signs that are popping up. So it'll be kind of fun to see everybody's response to it, and, the signs that just popped up overnight. So looking forward to getting those out of fabrication and installed. Any questions on the trail signage?
So I definitely appreciate that your Type D graphics include markers of points of interest like the Cowboy Museum or the zoo or things of that nature. I would also love to see maybe adopt some of the symbology from highway exit ramps. We don't need to know where gas stations are perhaps, but for food and coffee, that's certainly an important one. And so, for instance, on the Katy Trail, exiting at 16th so you can get to Spiked Coffee, or exiting at 4th so you can get to Culture Coffee, or near Overholser at 10th, knowing that Grand China is over on Council and 10th, are huge elements in my mind. And I don't know if highway exit signs get some level of sponsorship from Starbucks for having it listed on the sign, but maybe Grand China would be interested in helping add some symbology to signs as well.
When we were looking at identifying the points of interest, we looked at regions more than specific businesses or private entities. And so we identified, the Bricktown area. We've identified, fairgrounds. We identified, Adventure District. And that way, we don't, get into having to constantly change the signs out if, businesses change, move, or whatever, but we're identifying major districts. And so that's kind of the hierarchy of what we were looking at, as well as trying to keep the information fairly clean and easy to read, even just if you're cycling and you're slowing down. They're of a size and graphic components that are designed to be recognizable and easy to keep track of. And so trying to minimize, the detailed information and keep with the main points of interest was our priority with this time.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. Perhaps then, from the Will Rogers Trail, Windsor District, coffee and food as symbology, as opposed to just knowing if it's a shopping-only district.
Right. And it's kind of hard to see from just the way these are on the screen, but there's little bubbles that point to the different areas of interest, and there's a short information about what might be included there. So it doesn't list specific, businesses or shops or things like that, but it may include, you can find, food, restroom, something like that. So it is a little bit detailed information there, but it's not specific to, specific points, if that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, man, and the Trail Advisory Committee worked for many years, working with Parks and Recreation for the sign package. And several things, we want to make sure it's uniform, and so you see the same signage, same style at the different trails. And we have a wonderful trail system. We still need to go a long ways in connecting our trails together, and Southwest Oklahoma City certainly has been left out so far on trails, so we've got a long ways to go, but we do greatly need this signage package for information for people and for etiquette. I was hoping we'd say trail safety rather than etiquette, since I can't spell that word. But I think this is going to be very well received, and as we go, we can certainly learn. We had a lot of discussion. We didn't want to over signage. We wanted to make sure the signage was placed in a way like the mileage where it's ground level, so there's no danger for trail users, and then the upright signage to be far enough away from the trail that it was a safety feature. But certainly open as we go along to learn and adapt, as we've looked at other cities on this, and I think it's going to be a really exciting situation to see, and I think it really adds the quality of life and the safety of trail use. So it's going to be very exciting to see this come to reality.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I would echo those sentiments. I'm very excited about the signage here. I would say, and it sounds like we're pretty far down the road, which I think is generally fine, but since we get a chance to give you guys feedback, I think there is some feedback, at least of things we can think about as we move along. I, first of all, would maybe echo Mr. McKnight's statement from a little bit different frame. Is just making sure we're paying attention to literacy levels on our signage. So etiquette makes perfect sense to me, but also making sure that we're communicating those kind of things in a way that gets across to the people who are going to use these tools, and may not use words like etiquette, but might absolutely understand safety or, or some other word. Anyway, not suggesting we necessarily need to change, just things to think about when we're thinking about signage like this, because it seems like it's a bit new to us. So that's why I'm really excited about you all leaning into this process and what we've come up with. I also think Mr. Carfang had a really interesting idea that this might not be the time for it because of how far along this design is and because of what we want to accomplish here. But it would be interesting to think about as maybe a follow-on, an opportunity that could be offsetting revenue. I'm sure we won't make a killing, but offset revenue and being able to highlight some of those points of interest. If we're going to have this signage in place, I could see that absolutely being a value add. So again, not suggesting we redo anything here or any of that, but actually just thinking about how this signage can be used both to localize some of these elements as you go along the way. If that's something that happens down the road, I mean, it just seems like it'd be a really good opportunity to both highlight local businesses, but give people that opportunity to use the trails for more than just the bike ride, but actually thinking about, what are these places I can stop along the way? So, I'm really excited about what you guys have put together and where we headed and having some signage. And I really thought that one of the things Better Streets, Safer Cities could do is set a precedent and a good mark for where Oklahoma City is headed in the 21st century. And I mean, these are kind of little things, but I think it's things like this that will leave a lasting memory for our citizens, but and people who visit the city, that we're paying attention to these kind of things and that we do it well. So appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to item 3E3 in our agenda. I think we've touched on this a little bit. The Lightning Creek Trail, when the scope of that project, it's more of a sidewalk, kind of an on-street sidewalk. And so as we evaluate that, we really think that the budget should probably be closed out and put back and reallocated back into trails for future projects. And so that's what we're here, just recommending that approximately $250,000 be release those funds and put those back into trails for future projects.
And Brock, can you remind me for the Lightning Creek Trail, how integrated is that with the trail throughout Oliver Park?
I might have to ask Brandon to help me on that. I'm not 100% sure.
So what was always identified as Lightning Creek Trail, it ran from a connection in Wiley Post Park to the south at the South River Trail and ran south and eventually made its way over using the street network over to Blackwelder and 240. So
Okay.
Lightning Creek Trail doesn't actually go through Oliver Park. That's just an internal pathway system that's there in Oliver Park. It's not connected directly. And that's why, the recommendation of, looking at this is the original piece of the resurfacing specifically is actually being already addressed with our construction that's undergoing in Wiley Post Park now, as well as another planning effort looking at a future connection there. So,
Okay, that's good to know. The only reason I ask, and this is maybe an opportunity for trails to look at going forward. So Oliver Park is really nice. It has a nice loop around the entire park, and there are amazing wildlife to view. The only entrance from the street is on Grand or 36th, and then from there you can do an entire loop around. But to actually integrate that trail into a commute, there's about 10 feet of grass on the north end that is not very much to cross on a bike going from between Santa Fe and Broadway. There are a couple of ballers to keep cars off of the trail for sure,
Right.
but sneaking a bike through, maybe add some plywood down and easily make that a end-to-end connection as opposed to just a looping trail would be pretty helpful.
okay, we'll look at improving that. And I did remember that the South Grand Trail does go through there, and so that's the connection that you're talking about, the entrance to the Oliver Park.
Yeah.
Is there actually off of the South Grand Trail. And so there'll be additional connections via South Grand Trail once we're able to complete the Oklahoma Greenway Trail project and the connections there to the South River, the Greenway, and the Grand Boulevard Trail. So,
Yeah, the connection on the south side works really well, and then continuing south along Santa Fe. So yeah, it's really just a tiny extra bit of pavement on the north side to truly connect 29th Street to Grand.
very good.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Thank you. Motion passes. Next item is 3F.
Item 3F1 requests the board to receive and recommend the updated implementation plan for December 2021. The implementation plan update includes 3 budget revisions in the bicycle infrastructure category at an estimated cost decrease of $237,139. In addition, the closure of 7 resurfacing budget projects, 2 bicycle infrastructure budgets, and 2 trails budgets caused a credit of $2,361,807.31. The combined result is an overall program credit of $2,598,946.37. The results of the board's recommendation on arterial street resurfacing projects list, including city general funds and Better Street Safer City sales tax funds, will be included on the next implementation plan update. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. Very good. Not yet. Thank you. Very good. Next item is item number 4, financial report.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. Ian Hutchison, City's Office of Management and Budget, and I'll present the financial report for October 31st. So not too many big changes this month, but I will mention a few things. Just seeing if the report will pop up on the screen here. There we go. So in terms of revenues, there was $128,000 more that was collected. That was sort of split somewhat evenly between sales tax and interest, but most of it was coming from interest. And then in terms of expenditures, current allocations didn't change a whole lot, but they did increase by $32,000. That's just the amount that is allocated to projects. And for expenditures themselves, they did increase by $3.6 million. There were many projects with various amounts making up that $3.6 million. The most was coming out of street resurfacing, of course, and sidewalks and streetscapes. And the project with the biggest increase was the North Portland from Northwest 63rd Street street resurfacing project. And so total obligations, when you look at how much was released from encumbrances and how much increased from expenditures, did increase by about $780,000 for the month, which is good. And those are sort of the highlights from the financial report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Ian, I don't see where our Christmas party is being budgeted, but do want to make sure to mention.
Yeah,
Jason,
we could throw that up on here and
provided
call
his home
attention
for
to
us.
it. I mean, if you really want to. But There's probably room in that $128,000 for some punch or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been moved and seconded. Please pass your vote for acceptance. We're good, thank you. Next item is item number 5, Director's Report.
Thank you, Chairman and board members. So obviously, with our last meeting of the year, we're wrapping things up. One of the things that you can expect as we start to have a series of meetings early in 22 is an annual report. We'll wrap up this year and summarize and bring that back to you to show all the successes that we've had. A lot of work has been done. What you can expect in early next year is the remainder of the preliminary reports for the outstanding bike street enhancement projects coming forward. Similar to today, we need to receive your input and get those ready for recommendation to the City Council. We're also looking to make the final allocations of the funds, and so based on the financial report that you've seen and with some income that has come in, probably in the March or April timeframe, we'll be looking to make a recommendation to you to have the final allocations to the projects made, going into a final implementation plan so that we can get all those projects in construction next year. So lots of good progress. We still got a little left to do, but we are looking to have a meeting in January. So we'll coordinate that time with you over the holidays. But happy to answer any questions, and Jeff Butler's also with me. If there's any questions you have for him, he can respond as well. Thank you.
Sure. Next item is number 6, comments. Comments from the board?
Yeah, I always have a few. So living pretty close to the 39th Street district and having my grocery commute go past it, it's really cool to see the progress, and it really puts a smile on my face seeing how wide the sidewalks are coming along, and it just looks great, and I'm really excited about it. So I appreciate the work going in to the design there and getting community input there and progressing. I mentioned how I do like the way Southeast 25th is coming along. What I didn't mention was how fun it was to see other people riding in it in both directions, and then at a stoplight I had a very pleasant conversation with a few other bikers. So if you build it, they will come, seems very evident here. I do want to mention a few other things. So my commute takes me on a slightly roundabout way through the city to get to the south side of Tinker. And I vary it based on wind conditions. So typically I'll take, say, Walker or Robinson south to get to Grand, and then Eastern finally on 59th. The way home by way of daycare, I'll take Eastern all the way north to 4th. And usually I have a nice tailwind with that. It is kind of a long commute, so I see a lot of interesting roads and people along the way. Something that has been very consistent over the past couple of weeks. When I'm on Southeast 59th, I'll see multiple people in the morning and multiple people in the evening every single day, either walking in the grass or walking in the street or pushing their wheelchair in the street. The project for bike infrastructure on 59th can't come soon enough. So I'm really excited about that coming online. I know I do have a fair amount of statistics with regard to injuries and crashes and deaths and things of that nature, and this week is no different. On Monday of last week, there was a woman crossing Eastern near the First Americans Museum who was hit and killed by a commercial truck that is directly on my bike commute. On Thursday, on Southeast South Sooner and around 63rd, there was a pedestrian crossing Sooner who was hit by 2 vehicles and killed. That is within a few blocks of my commute. That incident happened within an hour of me biking by. On Friday, on South Shields and around 38th, so right off of Grand, where I also commute, a bicyclist was hit and killed by allegedly a Mazda that was a hit and run. And there was some interesting words in the interview with Master Sergeant Knight that didn't sit well with me. I won't repeat them, but it reflects the culture of viewing traffic violence as accidents as opposed to cause and effect from infrastructure or cause and effect from regulations or enforcement. All that is to say, let's see, there were 2 other pedestrian fatalities that weren't on my commute in just this past week. But I live and breathe this stuff. I'm not really going to change my commute much. Certainly my awareness of it will change my vigilance and hyper-awareness when, so that woman on Eastern was hit and killed on Monday. On Tuesday, a driver pulled out in front of me looking at their cell phone on Eastern in just that same spot. So there's a lot of vigilance that it takes in order to have the courage to bike around here, and it's really exciting to me how the infrastructure is progressing. I'm just really looking forward to an additional sense of urgency from everybody, including just our residents. Certainly, road quality, fixing potholes and whatnot is continuing to be the #1 priority because everybody here drives and everybody here is concerned about their suspensions and their wheels. But it's a different perspective when we're talking about vulnerable road users and lives. So I just want to leave with that. And again, I do appreciate all of the work and concern that has been exhibited by all of our staff and our board. I just will not stop reiterating the need for urgency on all of this. So thanks.
Yep, I had one comment, mostly because I'm never sure when we're gonna, how often we're gonna meet, and I'll be quick because my meter is running. But something that I was reminded of when I saw the the trails signage infrastructure, that is a question that I have in regards to thinking about street enhancements and how some of those things can manifest. What are the means, and this is something definitely we could talk about at a future meeting, but I just wanted to bring it up because that reminded me. But when you start thinking about things you can do at intersections creatively maybe versus just white stripes through the lines, can you tell me sort of what governs the limitations or the opportunity? So in Kansas City is the most recent example I've seen, especially in certain districts, things like that, both I think as a means of traffic calming, but also just a means of creating a little bit more sense of place. They'll do some things creatively with particular intersections or crosswalks. And I know that we don't have those in Oklahoma City, and I'm just wondering if there's a reason why we can't, or if that's just an opportunity for us to maybe be able to look into in the future.
So we actually do have several design districts that do have some level of different characteristics for crosswalks. The one that's probably closest to our meeting today is going to be the Film Road District. If you were to look at Film Row, you're going to see that most of the crosswalks in that area look like film strips. As we go into the work that's currently underway and in the design for Paseo, we're looking into some creative designing that makes those somewhat unique. But there are some limitations, and the Department of Justice has put Oklahoma City with some guidance and has said that you cannot create art in a crosswalk. And so I am aware that there's some other cities that are creating art in crosswalks. I can't say how they're doing that. But what I can share with you as the Public Works Director is that we've received guidance, written guidance from DOJ that says that we're not to do that. The questions are also asked, what are the consequences if we were to proceed with a project or do something that would be inconsistent with that guidance? It could limit our ability to receive future federal grants and funding. It would just put us at risk for liability. A lot of the guidance that we use is from the MUTCD, and so even the type and color of paint that is used in the roadway, we're not allowed to use certain colors for certain things, and so they're looking for consistency. But again, I do think that there's some guides where we can put something that's a little bit different. So I would ask that you maybe look at some of the other districts, whether it be like Film Row, if you look at Automobile Alley where they've used some red banding, if you look in Bricktown where they've used some white and red bricks, we do have some level of availability to do some of that.
Great, that's very helpful, thank you. And okay. Clearly you've been thinking about it too, Eric, so I appreciate that.
So we're going to continue to strive, and I think, again, the Plaza, which is our next one, Paseo is our next one, that we're looking for something unique there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Spinning off of some of the ideas you were throwing, statistics you were sharing, unfortunately, maybe something our group can work for in 2022 is public education on maybe just being safer, more aware of the world around you, people on crossings, on sidewalks, on trails, maybe looking at PSAs possibly to try and not just say, gosh, this is a horrible thing, but maybe try and do something about it, trying to take maybe some of our funds where there's decreases and look at the possibility and maybe even get a subcommittee to research this. Other cities have done some really nice things that direction. Our city really hasn't done very much or not enough. So that's something maybe to look at in 2022. I was also going to say I've always tried to figure out the meaning of life. I think I've learned more about that from my dogs and literature, but I do have great gratitude for what we've been able to do in difficult times in this board and where monies have been spent to public good. And I do want to thank everyone on this board and for showing up. That's a big part of it, but for the work that has been done by all in this room, and all great gratitude for such.
I'll agree with the chair. As I've said at several meetings in the past, it's great that we've made all the strides we have in trails and in bikes, but it is a cultural thing, and I agree. I think PSAs, now that we have all this stuff, what's the public's responsibility to what we have done for them, basically? But those statistics are quite unnerving. We have a lot of loss of life these days, some of it uncontrollable, some of it more controllable. Maybe this fits in the latter category. But I do think that PSAs would be something that would be of great value, just etiquette. The sign says trail etiquette. I think maybe we just need driving etiquette 101. So that's my thought. I also say thanks to all of you. I know that a lot of people work on everything that we say seemingly yay all day on, but it's not without a lot of question and investigation, and I'm proud of the fact that there's enough interest at this board to ask those questions.
Thank you. Any comments from staff? And I don't believe we have any citizens lined up, correct? No citizens to comment? Okay. Then that brings us to our conclusion. I want to say have a safe and Merry Christmas. Thank you. We're adjourned.